To say that The Wizard of Oz is a legendary brand would still be an understatement. From the instantly successful novel The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, released in 1900, to one of the most referenced and parodied films ever made, a work like this is an aspect of our culture. The Wizard of Oz homages were prevalent not only for film, but for theater as well. Even before the 1939 movie came out, there have been 6 theater adaptations of the original novel, and there were even more decades later. One of the most notable productions was The Wiz in 1974, and its subsequent movie had a legendary cast and song numbers, making it a league of its own. 1985's The Return of Oz gave a darker and edgier take on the story. This redirection of what is initially such a bright, family-friendly tale is the probable inspiration for author Gregory Maguire. Maguire thought of a revisionist concept that maybe the isolated Wicked Witch of the West wasn't truly evil. This story was made into the very grim revisionist novel Wicked, released in 1995. This book was relatively successful and would become a series. Soon after the book's release, there was already discussions on making a movie based on it, but Maguire was persuaded to give the rights to become a theater production. Wicked opened in 2003 in San Francisco with a mostly positive response, but its Broadway premiere was more mixed. It was even infamously snubbed for a Tony Award. Nonetheless, Wicked would become one of the most popular shows of the time, particularly being adored by a teenage audience. What theater kid doesn't know the lyrics to Defying Gravity? With this being such a popular and beloved musical, there were more discussions on having the story on screen. After the success of Les Miserables in 2012, Wicked was planned to be released in 2016, and then 2019, and then 2021. Wicked got stalled for Cats and Sing 2. Imagine that. But after a decade of pre-production, Wicked finally started filming in 2023. There's no question that a lot of this movie's budget went into its marketing. There's been Wicked branded Crocs, colorful macaroni and cheese, and sus dolls, and that's not even half of it. Even the Arc de Triomphe was excited and turned green and pink one night. Needless to say, this is a very important movie, and I have a lot to say about it. I will note that I've never seen the Wicked play, nor have I read the original novel, so there might have been some aspects that I missed. I'm going to run down the general plotline of Wicked and point out some aspects that have caught my eye. In this video, there will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen this movie and love to be surprised by certain plot twists, click off while you still can. You have been warned. So now, let's get started. Wicked begins with a retro-themed Universal Studios opening, and I thought it was cute that it was made to resemble the 1930s logo. We see an extravagant sequence of flying monkeys with some very intense music playing. There's just an aura of excitement happening. We start to see the familiar images of a yellow bricked road, and when I saw the Blink and You'll Miss It cameo of Dorothy and her friends, I wanted to scream in the theater, but I controlled myself. After the announcement that the Wicked Witch of the West is long gone, and Glenda looking kind of sad about this, we get a flashback to the witch's parents. It seemed like her mom had a little too much fun with her side piece, all while she was wearing a red dress. I've previously done a video on the evolution of red dresses, and when I saw it, I just thought, color symbolism. Elphaba was born with green skin, due to her mom drinking green elixir during her night of fun. Her being green would affect her for the rest of her life, even being shunned by her own family. Her nanny, who is also a bear, was the only one who shared kindness to her. She has a relatively good relationship with her sister, but it seems like she still keeps her distance. At Shiz University, we see an environment that is reminiscent of cities like Venice and Barcelona, especially with the gondolas and architecture. There may or may not be subtext for this, but I like to overthink. We see more scenes involving Glinda, and I kept thinking that Ariana was definitely channeling Kristen Chenoweth in her vocal performance. Elphaba is almost exposed for her powers, but the Dean of Sorcery, Madame Morrible, takes a liking to her. She's told that she has the possibility of meeting the wizard, and in the song The Wizard and I did like the lyric where she says that she's melting with excitement. Of course, Glenda and Elphaba are roommates, and they aren't getting along. The What Is This Feeling sequence is when the movie really starts picking up for me. I particularly like the editing and use of pink lighting. It's high energy and a lot of fun. One of my favorite parts is when Elphaba does the iconic Margaret Hamilton laugh, and I wish that she did it more than once. During class, where even her sister doesn't sit next to her, her animal professor is discriminated against. This is a difficult time for animals, since they're increasingly losing their ability to speak. Elphaba talks about this to Madame Morrible, who is essentially her only friend. She's very disturbed by this incident, and when she says that no one deserves to be scorned, you can really hear the pain and passion in her voice. She feels so strongly about this that she makes everything in the room levitate. This character arc kind of gives me Carrie White vibes, and I might not be the only one who caught that. Oh, and there's a Dancing for Life scene. Just classical musical theater. It's a great time. During the school's dance, Elphaba is laughed at by the attendees for wearing a hat that Glenda offered her. She can only defend herself in this room, so she does a Bob Fosse style dance to no music. This is simply a power move. Glenda starts doing a similar dance with her, and then there's one of those and everybody clap type sequences. But all is good now, and the two leads are now friends, which leads into the moment a lot of Wicked fans have been waiting for. The popular scene. Once again, this is a fun scene. I like Ariana's dancing, and her high kick was especially impressive. Things start getting better for Elphaba at school, but the situation with the animals get worse. They're now outwardly banned from teaching at Shiz, and after getting the opportunity to come face to face with the wizard, she can no longer let this injustice occur. Glenda seems to be a willing participant of the system. She may not outwardly support it, but she nonetheless lets certain things pass by. The two arrive at Emerald City, where everything is green. Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth even appear in a cameo. It was a cute and nice treat for all the Wicked fans. We then see the wizard who, of course, is hiding behind a facade. Elphaba starts to read a spell from the spellbook, which gives all the monkeys wings. The wizard does nothing about this, and it's revealed that he has no powers at all. And on top of that, Madame Morrible turns out to be a hidden villain as well. This isn't the most shocking revelation I've ever seen, but she does this double clap thing that goes along with the music. It turns out that she was only nice to Elphaba because she saw her as useful for her powers. Elphaba does not stand for any of the corruption going on and is publicly demonized as a wicked witch. She's left on her own, since not even Glenda will come to her defense. During the finale, she sings a musical theater staple, Defying Gravity. And OMG, the high notes, the key changes, all happening in a chase sequence. A lot is going on in the best way. The scene of Elphaba flying on her broom into the sunset was simply awesome, and I got goosebumps. This was the first time in years that I've seen the audience clap at the end of a movie, and based on a lot of reactions, this movie affected people emotionally. We're seeing one of the most iconic screen villains being a protagonist that we're rooting for, and as we see her flying away from the idealistic Emerald City, it comes across as genuinely empowering. If standing for what she believed in made her an outcast, then so be it. The movie ends with a to be continued title. This is only half the story that we'll see finalized next year. In a previous video, I've noted that before Wicked's release, the costumes have been praised, but the lighting was criticized for appearing too bland. While some scenes do look a bit blown out at times, I think the lighting was just fine. Maybe not spectacular, but it worked. And yes, the costumes delivered. I love interpreting how costumes and set design tell a story on its own, and Wicked gave a lot for the audience to look at. Glenda's pink dress is a good homage to the 1939 version. The lack of sleeves and flower-like appearance gives it a modern touch. Elphaba's outfits lean to a traditionally witchy look, but the cuts and added details give some nods to the Edwardian era. The costume designer Paul Tazwell has experience designing the Wizard of Oz entities, as he won an Emmy for Best Costume Design for The Wiz in 2016. His approach for Elphaba's designs was to appear grounded in nature, utilizing soft materials. He also interprets that the reason her main color is black is to mourn her mother, whom she lost at a very young age. If Elphaba represents Earth, Glenda represents air. And I know that my flower connection was accurate, since Tazwell stated that the dress she wore at the dance was inspired by a bank of roses he saw at Regent's Park in London. There are several grandiose sets that are great to look at, but I'd say that the forest is the prettiest setting. It really emphasizes the fairy tale aura of the story. Another thing about Wicked is that CGI is only used when it's 100% necessary. Emerald City does look like how you expect it to look, but it's a real set that characters are actually interacting with. The building of real sets does give some nods to old Hollywood musicals, but with modern camera techniques. Wicked is a concept that centers on making people rethink what they believe, that heroes may not be all good, and villains might not be all bad. We've seen stories of the quote-unquote villain turning out to not being the true evil all along, or at least having a sympathetic backstory. Movies like Megamind, I, Tonya, and Cruella are what personally come to mind. It is true that Wicked contains quite a few cliches, but in my view, cliches are a neutral concept. Using them doesn't inherently make a story better or worse. There is a surprise villain that isn't really a surprise in a post-Frozen world, and some underdeveloped side characters, but I'll give this movie the benefit of the doubt since this is only part 1. It's possible that some things will be further explored in the sequel. Before I saw this, I had no expectations from Wicked, and while I hypothesized that it would be at least okay, it turned out to be the best movie of 2024. Yes, I said it. If you're a fan of musicals, The Wizard of Oz, or just fantasy films in general, this would likely be a fun watch for you. I'm certain that I will be checking out the sequel, and we'll just have to wait and see where this story takes us. Now, as for the question on how Wicked is going to influence the future for musical films, I think it's a little too close to call. As far as I know, the next upcoming big name musical is Snow White, and you know I'll be sharing my thoughts on that as well. But to make a prediction for Hollywood films in general, I theorize we're going to see more brightly colored, lighthearted films in the future. There's a Polly Pocket movie coming out, and it might be just what we need right now, and hopefully it will have the heart and soul that Wicked has. And that's all I have for my thoughts on Wicked Part 1. Thank you all for watching to the end, and I hope to see you all in the next one.